someone had to break in order to make something as beautiful as For Emma forever ago.
This is not the sound of a new man.
The debut record of Justin Vernon's band Bon Iver is considered a monumental work of the indie folk genre, earning widespread praise for its emotionally resonant songwriting and innovative musical approach. The journey Vernon took in making this record has become something of an indie folk legend. He recorded the album at his father's hunting cabin after retreating there to escape adulthood and deal with his heartbreak. And 3 months later, he emerged with an album's worth of audio. The story and the process of creating the album has become closely linked to the album itself, and significantly impacts how it's understood and interpreted by listeners. But as I mentioned, creating something as beautiful as For Emma forever ago first required someone to break.
You know, the previous 4 or 5 years, I just sort of become kind of a sad person. And I spent more time being sad than I was happy, jovial or something. And I just needed to finally put an end to it.
Vernon's story begins with a series of setbacks. He got pneumonia and mono that led to a liver infection, unemployment, being kicked out of his band of 10 years due to tensions, and a breakup with his then girlfriend. On top of all of this, he was also struggling with an online gambling addiction. Vernon's life had spiraled into mediocrity, throwing the 25-year-old into a depression. That following winter, Vernon packed up all of his belongings and drove from North Carolina to his father's remote cabin in Dunn County, Wisconsin, searching for silence and isolation. The rustic cabin became his place to escape his misfortunes, live cheaply, and focus on playing music. He lived a simple, self-sufficient lifestyle, maintaining the grounds, learning to hunt deer for food, and spending most of his time alone in the cabin, drinking and watching TV.
Thought I'd maybe work on music, but when I got there, I just sort of was lazy and I didn't do anything and sort of just sat and sort of, I don't know, just kind of breathed in and breathed out for a couple weeks.
Days began to blend together and become indistinguishable from one another, until Vernon found himself having to scare a bear off his porch in the middle of one night. A bear that could have very well killed him.
I remember there was a night, it was dark and cold, and it'd been at least a week since I'd seen anyone, and sort of choir sound sort of getting in my head, and so I sat down and basically started and finished this whole choral piece that ended up being the introduction for Lump Sum.
Yep. While he had not initially intended to create music, it soon became a part of the process of organizing his thoughts. Curious to attempt the ideas forming in his head, Vernon would fetch some of the recording equipment he had in the trunk of his car.
This guitar was sort of like, it was the catalyst, I think, to the record. When I was sick, I was just like in bed for 3 months, and I was on eBay and I found this, and it's like a 60s Sears like catalog guitar. And from there, almost every song on the record was made with it. You can kind of hear how it's really brittle and things like that. And I just put the microphone as close to the F-hole here as possible, and it just got like a really like creaky, really close kind of woody sound.
The location where the album was recorded becomes even more significant when considering the limited number of instruments and equipment that Vernon had at his disposal. His recording setup was confined to a Mac computer with Pro Tools and a single SM57 microphone. Vernon used auto-tune and several vocal tracks on many of the songs to produce dense, processed choirs and rich vocal harmonies, which became a hallmark of Bon Iver's sound. He also put extra effort into the mix and sound staging to avoid an overly digital sound, resulting in a pleasing balance between acoustic and subtle electronic elements. In order to achieve the fragile, thin sound that adds to the emotional intensity and weariness of Skinny Love, Vernon used a 1930s resonator guitar. It's played in drop C tuning, giving it a rough around the edges, almost amateur feel, as if Vernon had come across the guitar and used its current tuning without bothering to fix it. Overall, the album's production evokes a sense of comfort and homeliness, making it feel like the listener is with Vernon in the cabin as he recorded it. The songs that Vernon wrote during his stay were unlike anything he had created before. They were a way for him to process and release the turmoil in his life, the struggles and hardships that come along with being in a relationship, and the possibility of it not working out in the end. tracks carry a sense of regret and longing for what could have been.
What might have been lost.
Others express feeling vulnerable as a result of being surprised by so many tough situations.
I'm crippled and slow.
It's all about the struggle to adjust to new circumstances.
So many foreign roads, so relative.
The relationship that I was going through in North Carolina wasn't like the relationship that I think the record is about. It's about how people's first love, for instance, like mine, and how I never got over it.
For Emma touches on the theme of looking for comfort and support during a difficult time, and considering whether it's possible to move on and find something new to hold on to. It looks at the struggle to heal and find peace after experiencing loss. The album's title was inspired by his first love's middle name, explaining further that Emma represents a painful place or feeling that a person can't escape from. Ari Stax mentions feeling paralyzed and drunk, indicating a difficult time. Mentioning a frozen ground and a black crow could also symbolize feeling isolated or negative.
There's a black crow sitting across from me.
Our narrator is letting a person know that they won't be getting over them anytime soon, and that even if they do eventually move on, their love will always be a part of them.
Your love will be safe with me.
Everybody has an Emma. A love I once had sort of sabotaged relationships I had after that, up until recently. And it's alleviating that pain is what the record does.
Recording For Emma in isolation was the key to the album's creation, because it allowed Vernon to fully express his emotions without anyone else's influence or making him feel self-conscious. The experience would help him put to rest the memory of his lost love. By February, with winter drawing to a close, Vernon emerged from the cabin with 9 songs. He initially thought the final mixes he made were just demos that he'd re-record later.
I didn't know it was a record. I was kind of thinking this is a good step in the right direction. Maybe this is demos, maybe this is... I didn't know.
However, the music he made at the cabin ended up surprising and impressing his friends and fellow musicians, who urged him to release the record as it was.
When I got that kind of feedback, I just decided, all right, let's take a shot with this. So I sent it out to a few labels. I handed it to a few friends, and it just really didn't take long. It just sort of happened, it just like went.
It quickly gained critical acclaim and popularity through a glowing review by Pitchfork, was re-released by indie label Jaguar, featured on TV shows like House and Grey's Anatomy, and named one of the best debut albums ever by Rolling Stone magazine. For Emma Forever Ago helped popularize alternative folk and helped pave the way for acts like Mumford & Sons and the Lumineers. It's often seen as the starting point for the mid-2000s indie folk movement, which included artists like Sufjan Stevens, Grizzly Bear, and Fleet Foxes.
Through time and reflection of the basically that time that I spent at that cabin, I realized that by doing that, it really helped me get to where I needed to be a happy person, to be happier, and to kind of cultivate that happiness in my life.
Many of us dream of moving out into the woods and living in isolation for a few months. And Vernon actually did it. It's why the album and the process of making it are so closely connected. We're all curious to know more about Vernon's story and what he took away from that experience. Emerging from that cabin with something as beautiful as For Emma Forever Ago meant Vernon had put himself back together again. The card on screen will take you to a video about when Bon Iver created a brand new instrument. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep listening.